Hi, thank you so much for coming out tonight. I'm Valerie Steele, Director of the Museum at FIT, and we have a really exciting conversation in store for you. Zandra Rhodes is a fashion and textile trailblazer. She's celebrating 50 years of working in fashion. She's influenced the work of many contemporary labels like Katrantzou and Alice Temperley. She's just written another book, really beautiful book, which honors the centrality of textile design in her work while exploring all of the versatility of her imagination throughout her long career. She's going to be interviewed tonight by Fern Mallis, who's former Senior VP of IMG Fashion, former Executive Director of the CFDA, an accomplished interviewer and public speaker. We also want to thank Dakota Scopitello, who's been the project manager of the book and the evening. So you can buy the book, incidentally, afterwards, around outside where you came in. So won't you join me, please, in welcoming Fern and Zandra.
We do have a video. Don't you just want to hang out in her studio? It's just so colorful and fabulous. So good evening, everyone, and thank you all for being here, as Valerie said. In the interest of transparency, just 2 nights ago, Zandra and I had a 90-minute conversation about her life and her 50-year career in this industry at the 92nd Street Y, where I host my Fashion Icon series. So we're having a little bit of Groundhog Day tonight. And, now I know all the answers that I asked her the other night, and we'll be able to
I won't have the same shock on my face.
I know. I told her, look, completely surprised when I ask you something tonight. But in any case, I'm happy to talk to Zandra any night of the week because she just has had such a brilliant career and has so much. And I know even in our 90 minutes, we probably didn't cover, so many things. But she is Dame Zandra Rhodes. That's a very powerful title. And I do have to say that Zandra has been a true inspiration to me. And as a designer, I've admired my entire adult life, and that covers a lot of years. On my very first trip to London after I graduated from college, I was a shopaholic because I was always interested in fashion, and I was buying things at Biba and Mary Quant and Tuffin and Fall, and the Tuffin and Fall probably were prints that Zandra designed for them. And I bought 2 Ossie Clark dresses, which with Celia Burtwell prints, which I could kill myself for giving all of this away and not having any of it anymore. Not that any of it would fit me, but those were the good old London days. I'd never owned a Zandra Rhodes dress. They were a little out of my price range and a little bit, out of my range. But I had this dream always that I was going to get one of the, almost some that you've seen in the video, white one, the layered white on white with the little pearls dangling on the layers of chiffon, and that was going to be my wedding dress when that occasion occurred. Well, I haven't been married, so I don't have the dress.
It could still occur.
I don't have the dress, but I'm, hope springs eternal. When it happens, I'm calling Zandra. But better than getting that dress all those years ago, we've become friends, and that's really more important. 3 years ago, Zandra and I also shared a marvelous experience together crossing the Atlantic on the Queen Mary. And it was
the first one, wasn't it?
It was amazing, and it was the first Fashion Week crossing that they now do. So we left from Southampton, England, not the island, not Long Island, and it took a week to get here, and we disembarked in Brooklyn on the very first day of Fashion Week. And it was pretty special, right?
It was great fun doing the whole thing, yes.
Yeah, it was great fun. We'll talk about that in a bit too. And during that trip, because one of the things Zandra does so well is beautiful watercolors and illustrations, and she painted for me a couple of watercolors that are framed in my office of the ship just as we were underneath the Verrazano Bridge at dawn, arriving in New York with the Statue of Liberty as the sun was coming up.
That's right. I did that at 4 o'clock in the morning.
It was really beautiful. Okay, but here we are talking about 50 years in fashion, 50-year career. That's quite a feat. And the opening spread in Zandra's book, and I will let her talk, don't worry. It's not all going to be me talking about this, but the opening spread in the book is a photo shot for British Vogue in 2006 by Mario Testino. Zandra is the only woman in the middle of Paul Smith, Manola Blahnik, Philip Tracy, Stephen Jones, Roland Murray, Jasper Conran, and Hussein Chalayan. They were dubbed in that picture and in that magazine the Style Council, and dare I say they still are. Susie Menkes wrote in the book, in the foreword, with shocking pink hair and dresses decorated punk style with safety pins, Zandra burst into the fashion era that was named for new energy, swinging London. Her dramatic shows in the 70s were a template for fashion as theater and entertainment. But behind the wild scenes and the torn seams, the designer was an exceptional creator whose inventive prints followed the contours of the body in a unique way. Our good friend Iris Apfel also wrote in the book, in a preface. She said, "To make it in this world, you must know how to follow your gut. There's no roadmap to style. Zandra's designs, like her bold and vibrant attire, knocked poised English society straight into the future. And the beauty of Zandra is that she quite literally wears her emotions on her sleeves. She just does what feels right to her and wears whatever makes her feel happy. In a world that tells you to sit down, shut up, and fit in, Zandra was born to stand out. And Zandra also, Mary Lou Luther pointed out that she is the first designer who really brought the street to the runway, way back in London with her conceptual chic collection. And that was before Vivienne Westwood did it, and she did safety pins and holes way before Gianni Versace did it. And Zandra has said, "I supply fantasy for people, and I can't imagine fantasy will ever go out of people's lives. And that fantasy has enabled her to dress clients as diverse as Diana, the Princess of Wales, Jackie Onassis, Elizabeth Taylor, Freddie Mercury, Donna Summer, Diana Ross, Debbie Harry, Her Royal Highness Princess Michael of Kent, Paris Hilton, Sarah Jessica Parker, Naomi Campbell, Helen Mirren, Kate Moss, not a shrinking violet among them." Zandra was made a commander of the British Empire. She has 9 honorary doctorates from the universities in the US and the UK. She's Chancellor of the University of Creative Arts and was named a Dame on the Queen's Honors List. And staying relevant is not an issue for her. When Pier Paolo Piccioli, who you saw in the video, of Maison Valentino, chose her to create design textiles for his Spring-Summer 2017 and first collection on his own, she reinterpreted the Hermanius Bosch painting, The Garden of Earthly Delights, which was done in 1490 to 1500. And he said, I still remember the emotion of watching her first sketches. I could not have asked for more vibrant and unconventional wisdom and vision. I was astonished by her talent for combining pictorial and pop symbols, such as flames, hearts, lipsticks, like the top I'm wearing, and thunderbolts in shades of red and pink. He said meeting Zandra meant facing the beauty of revolutionary artists. She's incredibly strong and kind at the same time, and she's a good friend, and I love her. And I couldn't say it better myself. So, now you're on, Zandra.
Now my turn, yes, go on.
Okay, so, congratulations on the book. It's done in 5 decades, the way it's broken out. Was there anything in looking back at the book now that you would have done differently in your career, would like to do over?
I never really look at things like that because I think all the time it's a case of, as so many people go by the wayside, and I'm lucky that I haven't. So really it's a case of always hoping that you can come up with an idea or a reinterpretation or something that's relevant and hope that that's going to apply to your customer base, really.
Has your customer base changed a lot through the years?
Oh gosh, that's difficult to know. I mean, I'm always pleased when people want to wear my things. I mean, basically I'm a textile designer that couldn't find a job. And so when I left college to try and sell my work, no one would buy it. So I then went to Fole and Tuffin, that's even before this book begins, and they liked my prints, so I began to be a printer of my own fabric and set up a studio with a print table and everything like that. And then I had the Fulham Road Clothes Shop. In fact, someone here reminded me they'd even been to the Fulham Road Clothes Shop.
Who here has been to the Fulham Road Clothes Shop?
Lady in the front row there.
Of course.
And then when that collapsed and Sylvia got offered another job because she'd been working with me, I was then flat on my face and I thought, I hated teaching, by the way. I couldn't bear teaching. So, because I always wanted to do my own work. So I then decided that I was going to put my own collection together.
Well, let's go back to, you said you hated teaching. Your mother was a teacher.
My mother loved teaching, was very upset that I didn't like teaching.
And she was a teacher in the school you went to, and you kind of stayed away from her.
She was a teacher at the art college that I went to, but I pretended I didn't know her, and I went to college, but I thought I'd be a book illustrator. And then I was taught by this wonderful woman, Barbara Brown, and fell in love with doing printed textiles, which I think is something wonderful. You can print and put pattern on a whole dress, and it can influence the shape, and it can make the dress absolutely magical.
Mm-hmm. Let's go back, though, to what influenced you and how you got to get to all those things and to want to do textiles. Your mom was a fitter at the House of Worth.
My mother had been a fitter at the House of Worth before she was married, and then when I was a child, after the war had ended, she was teaching in the art college, and so there was always lovely fashion books and things going around, and I modelled in the dress shows and things like that, but hadn't imagined that I'd go into making clothes.
But that was subliminally in your environment growing up.
Yes, so it was
so it
always
just kind
there,
of
yes. And she
seeps
was
in.
very exotic, and when it was an open day at school, I'd say, please don't come looking different from all the other mothers. Because she'd wear a beautiful hat and lots of makeup and look like no one else there.
And the apple doesn't fall far from the tree, though, right?
Probably, but I didn't see it that way as a child.
Okay. So clothing was a part of your life growing up. You also, we know, wanted to be an archaeologist at one point.
I loved all the idea of looking at all, digging up all the wonderful things, Egyptian and Sumerian and things like that.
Okay, the most important question. When did you first start to dye your hair?
I left the Royal College in the 60s, but then a bit later, Vidal Sassoon brought out those lovely green wigs, and they always pinched my head, and I thought, well, if you can dye a sheep, why can't you dye hair? And I went to Leonard, and he started experimenting on my hair, and we'd bleach it in little bits.
Leonard was a famous hairdresser in London at the time?
Yes, Leonard of London, and he started to bleach it, and I took my own hair dye in, which came out all over the pillows, but we painted bits of green, and I stuck feathers on the end of it in those days.
So it was green, and then there was a point where it was pink, red, and blue.
It was all different colours.
But then you finally settled on the pink.
I went to China in 1980, or 1979, and everyone was in army uniform or in the navy blue. And I came back and designed a Chinese collection. I said to myself, red china, and dyed my hair pink. And pink is so easy to keep. It doesn't take too much maintenance, so that's it.
So that's good to know. The pink hair doesn't take much maintenance.
Not much maintenance.
Is there a Pantone pink color that you...
I have got a Pantone number that I keep in front of my diary for when they ask what colour Pantone I have to quote, but I can't remember what it is now.
Okay, well, the pink is very becoming on you, Zandra. Let's see, we'll talk about Mary Lou when she met you. So you told us your first jobs out of college, you started designing the Fulham Road Clothes Shop. How did you decide, though, after that shop closed, that you wanted to open up your own business? I mean, how old were you then?
I was 23 when I left college, and then I was 28, and I'd done stuff for Fole and Tuffin, and then I'd worked with Sylvia Ayton with our own collection, but she got offered a job and I didn't, and then I thought, well, I'm not going to teach. My mother had just died, and I think I had about £400, which is about what? Now it would have been about $600 maybe, and I thought, that's it, I'm not going to teach, I'm going to put a collection together. And I put a collection together, and I designed the prints, which were all very big prints, and I had a wonderful friend who was originally a librarian who went to the Royal College, and I said, would you show me how to make patterns? And everyone in those days used to say, if you're a textile designer, you can't be a fashion designer. And I thought, well, when I was at Royal College, the people who were in fashion didn't look that much more intelligent than me. So I haven't got a choice. I want to use my prints. So I did a beautiful circle one that you'll see at the beginning of the book that became the kaftan, was all these big circle sleeves, and I did dresses that were based on the circle. And I did a coat that was a huge, wonderful felt coat. And they were photographed on two Ukrainian American models who were floating around in hippie style in London by David Bailey, and they kept saying to me, "You've got to come to America, you'll make your fortune."
But before you were connected to America, what were the inspirations for those patterns? Because you have very signature, the knot, the squiggles, the chevrons, and
the wiggles I'd always done since I was probably first at school, but then I was influenced by wonderful Fair Isle sweaters, and I did as if the flowers were all knitted, and so it was called knitted circle, and if you look closely it's all like knitting. And so things are often based on things I've seen that I then develop into patterns.
And the book of knitting instructions had lots of diagrams.
Yes, had the diagrams that I used, yes.
And what were some of the other more signature?
I'd go to the V&A a lot, so I was influenced by things like Elizabethan things. And then, of course, after I came here in 1971, I went to the Museum, the American Indian, and did all the prints that are based with the feathers, as if the feathers are hand-sewn onto the fabric, and the crisscross embroidery.
And I read Amelia Pucci also was an inspiration at some point.
That's actually quite an interesting story, because while I was still at the Royal College, this would have been in probably 63, Pucci came to London, and the college people said, "We think," I was the top of my class, and they said, "We'd like you to meet him, maybe he'll offer you a job." So I go in with my big folder and I lay all my designs out, and he very grandly came in and looked at all my designs, and then he said, "I suggest you design in black and white."
Oh! How dare he!
But I mean, he was a big influence in the sense that, he'd started to do wonderful panel prints where the print and the importance of the print was so wonderful. So it was good because it led me onto my own adventures.
Did you ever meet him later when you became a success as a designer?
No, sadly, but I'd like to have done.
Yeah, I'm horrified at that comment. He clearly saw talent there and was jealous of all the colors you were doing. Didn't want any competition. Okay, so those are your inspirations and your patterns. So then, yes, your friends told you, you should come to America.
Come to America.
And somebody, who was it, made an introduction for you, and tell everybody who they introduced you to.
The head of British Vogue did a personal letter to Diana Vreeland, of American Vogue, so I had my little letter with me, and I came over with my collection and managed to get an appointment to see her. And I must say, she was the most amazing lady I think I've ever met. Her character was so strong that when you left the room, you felt you'd been bowled over, but you couldn't remember what she even looked like. And she loved the things, and she immediately organised a photo session with Natalie Wood, and did a whole double-page spread, or maybe it was 4 pages, I can't remember, and then picked up the phone and organised for me to go and see Geraldine Stutz at
Henry Bendel,
and also made a phone call to Mika Ertegun and Chessie Rayner, who bought clothes.
Oh.
So that was very, very nice.
That's a nice way to start your business in New York, right? You get an introduction to go see Diana Vreeland first. Was the office all red at the time?
Her house was, but I don't remember. The office wasn't red, I don't think.
And she was wearing a black turtleneck
Probably, but she was and what I loved, she always had red all round the outside of her face, she was just an amazing woman. You'd feel that you'd been run over by a steamroller, but she was amazing.
And which were the dresses, do you remember, that she loved, that she photographed on
She
there?
photographed the yellow felt coat, which is also in here,
the book.
And the chiffon caftans for that series.
And then to meet Geraldine Stutz, who I was lucky to be friends with, who was extraordinary and still
I was
one of the best stores that ever happened in New York.
And I was probably there for about 10 years, probably much more.
You had your own little boutique in there, didn't you?
A little area.
I
had in there, yes.
But you had an area. Stephen Burrows had an area there. Ralph Lauren at the time
very
had
exciting
an area
time,
there.
which was wonderful.
John Kloss, all sorts of people that were,
Yes, I think so.
yeah.
But I was so amazed by the whole thing. I don't think I absorbed everything.
God, and that's where there were several women wearing your clothes the other night, and some of them
Yes,
bought
that was
them
wonderful.
at Bendel's.
And at that time, I wore these chiffons, floating chiffons, and high white beaver boots that I had to whiten every day, and a scarf around my head with red lipstick curls, because I still had brown hair.
You had
I
brown
had
hair at
brown
that
hair
time?
when I first came in 71.
Okay.
Hadn't gone grey by then.
So when you went gray is when you went pink, for sure.
That's it.
Okay. Well, the business started at Bendel's, but then it also very quickly took off at Saks, at Sakowitz in Houston, and
Sackwitz in Houston
and
and
Neiman
Martha's.
Marcus.
Martha's in Palm Beach,
and Martha's in Palm Beach.
where I did a show with Bill Blass.
With Bill Blass. That must have been
I
fun.
did a joint show. It was great fun.
He was quite the gentleman, Mr. Blass.
Always, always.
But then you also years later did a show for Martha's in New York when they had the boutique, and that was at the Pierre Hotel.
That was at the Pierre Hotel, and when I was doing an opera, the Pearl Fishers Opera in Pittsburgh, I went to the Andy Warhol Museum, and it was quite wonderful because right upstairs, a video of my show was showing, which was gorgeous. And that was choreographed by Ron Link, who also produced Divine's plays.
Oh,
But
that's
he
right.
did a very romantic show.
Well, I mean, it's fascinating that your show that you did in New York, you didn't even know that Andy Warhol himself was filming that, and that's why it's in the museum in Pittsburgh.
I know, it was wonderful. I didn't know that at the time, and it's a beautiful film. It was the only one showing up there.
Mm-hmm. And you were friends with Divine, though, right? Divine and Philip?
Divine was a great friend, and I used to stay with him in his pent hut on
58th Street in Madison.
58th, yes, in Madison.
Yep. I knew Divine well, and he would be having so much fun in this day and age with
He
what's
liked
happening
dressing up
with
in my clothes when I
dressing
gave him
and
the
pose
chance.
and I will tell you that Divine, if you look back, he's in lots of the old John Waters movies, and big guy, was he a drag queen? I don't know what you call him. I mean, he was
When
just
he wasn't working, he was always in a little navy blue Chinese pixie suit, little suit and little navy blue soft flat shoes, He was like a wonderful child to have around.
And there's a building on Madison and 58th Street. If you're walking around, you have to look up sometime. It's on the
Downtown.
southeast corner, and it's about a 5-story building. And on the top is one of those, it looks like a bird coop, like a house on the top of a building. And it's like being in New Orleans, getting up there with all these rails in the back and wrought iron. And then there's this house on the top of the building. And my sister, years back, worked at an architect's firm that was across the street. And she used to tell me, we look out and we see this house and these crazy people and these dressed in these outfits on the roof of this building. And then years later, I was there, I said, Stephanie, that's Divine. That Divine lived there, and his partner was an interior designer. Philip.
That's
He was a
right,
decorator.
Philip.
Yeah. Amazing. The fun days. Okay, so tell us about some of these people you dressed. Princess Margaret, the Countess Blondie, Jacqueline Kennedy, Bianca Jagger, Freddie Mercury. Tell us, but what about working with some of these stars? How did you have, there must be some fun stories with some of them.
Well, Freddie, I got a phone call from either Freddie or Brian. And for anyone in this audience that really knows me, knows that I don't really know very much about music. I could tell you what's on National Public Radio, but not the music. And so I get a phone call, and I sort of say, well, I haven't got a changing room because I've got a funny little studio, little climb-up attic that they come to. So I said, why don't you come in the evening? So once I'd put the phone down and made the appointment, I had to ask the people who worked for me, this is 1975, what they played. They had a hit, but it wasn't the one, it was early hit. And so they came round in the evening, and I picked off different things, and the eventual one that you saw in the clip was a satin one, all in pleating, that was originally a bridal top. And I said to Freddie, move around the room and see how you feel and if that's how you want to be. And then I made the garment for him and several garments for Brian. And they gave us tickets to go to the concert. And I went with my great friend Dougie Field. And we had to be, this was when Earl's Court still existed, we had to be at least 10 years older than most of the audience. And so that was really, I went to the concert, and then after that I never saw them again until I ended up signing things in the fans brochure, after Freddie had died.
And how gratifying was it then to get the call for Bohemian Rhapsody, the movie of his life?
No, that was wonderful, that's the top that people always remember him in. And that was quite wonderful.
I mean, that your top is so memorable in his life. And full circle to come back and be in the movie.
I know, it's quite strange, some of the different things that you make and you don't know how much further. Like I have seen some of, you see them and you think, oh, that's lovely, seeing that as a wonderful memory.
What happens to that clothing now from the movie, do you know?
I think it was donated to, isn't there a pop museum in Columbus or somewhere? I don't know, where they put the tops.
Rock and Roll Hall of
There's a rock
Fame?
something
Maybe.
like that.
It's in Cleveland.
I believe it must be in.
Okay, interesting. What about dressing Jacqueline Kennedy and people like that? Did you
The
meet
dress
her?
that you see in the book of Jackie Kennedy, I think she borrowed from Lee Radziwill. And I think she got them at, she bought those in Bendel's. But in fact, the one on Lauren Bacall, Halston sent Lauren Bacall to me in London.
Oh, nice.
So I fitted her in London. It was terribly embarrassing because she trod on a pin and she was going, oh, and I didn't know what to say. But anyway, I made her several things, which was wonderful.
For Lauren Bacall. And she paid for them?
Yes.
Okay. That's not her reputation. Okay. Okay. Lady Diana, you were, thank you. You were asked, along with several other designers in 1974, to create a gown for the future princess, Lady Diana.
No. Yes, they said there was going to be a royal wedding. Yes, I suppose we assumed that's what it was going to be. And of course, that led to the influence of my gold collection, which is all the big swirls and the gold pleats. I don't think that was ever considered. But she would have looked quite good in it. But instead, it's a picture of Diana Ross.
Diana Ross, photographed by Richard Avedon.
Yes, we
in
had
your
to
book.
plead to get that photograph.
Yeah, that's not easy. And it's was in the camp exhibit at the Met.
That was in the camp exhibit at the Met, and then I've got another one that's currently on at my exhibition at the Fashion Textile Museum in London, which is celebrating my 50 years.
Well, let's talk about that museum. So you bought a warehouse just outside the outskirts of, little neighborhood of London.
I've always believed in my work that I do, and when it became a bit unfashionable, I was still doing things and going around and doing appearances. I did shows all round with Neiman's and Saks, but I'd always saved everything, and I had them all in this warehouse, of which some got flooded, and I thought people had sort of forgotten me, and then my great friend Andrew Logan said, look, there's a warehouse going, why don't you found a museum? You've always wanted to. And I said, what do you think I am? Made of money, but it was in a very unfashionable area, and so it was like being in the A, B's and C's in New York. And I was able to sell my house in Notting Hill Gate and buy the building. And I realised that it would have to be quite dramatic, so through my boyfriend, who'd been the president of the Warner Brothers, I was able to meet Ricardo Legarreta, the Mexican architect, who's very colourful, and I thought he'd be perfect. So I got the introduction, and then I flew him over first class on my American mileage tickets to London, and I got all the top architects together for a big dinner, and I said, this is a really up-and-coming area, and he said he'd design it for me.
And the building looks like her. It's pink and orange. I can only imagine in grey London, seeing a building that is literally pink and orange. It's extraordinary. And now in that building...
Well, then they built the Shard, And of
Okay.
course now it's a very fashionable area, so it works out perfectly.
You were ahead of your time. And you live there, you have studios there, you have archives there, and...
Yes, I have the top floor is my penthouse, but through the clever ideas of my boyfriend, because I thought I've got to convert it now, we've made 2/3 of it the museum, and 1/3 is my workroom with my print table, and then we had another architect who Lee Goretta approved of, and he designed 9 apartments on the top with an extra floor, and we pre-sold 8 of them that paid for building and converting the building. And then they built the Shard, as I say, and now it's a very fashionable area.
And you feature the work of British designers and other designers there, which...
Well, we
I
had
don't-
Anna Swee's first
well,
show there.
Yes, we're going to just say about that. But I mean, I don't think there's another designer alive who spends her money creating a museum that will feature other designers' work. I mean, that's really quite spectacular. And you did just recently have the work of Anna Sui, which led to her getting the exhibition at the Museum of Art and Design in New York, which I believe is still on, and if you haven't
Go and
seen
see
it,
it, it's lovely.
It's wonderful. And Anna was with us the other night, and you've all become great friends.
But the other thing, one of the reasons originally as well, is it's not happening as much as it did, but being a textile designer, I felt that textile designers are always the Cinderellas of the business. If they're not actually the designers, you know, when you see a wonderful Karl Lagerfeld, beautiful Chanel suit, some invisible weaver created that gorgeous weave that isn't ever acknowledged. So I felt that a lot of textile designers needed to be acknowledged for the work that they did. And that was another reason for the museum.
Well, bravo for doing that. And Salah Hassanin, who was your boyfriend, and was the president of Warner Brothers and traveled the world opening multiplexes in China and Asia and the Far East and everywhere, which provided a lot of great trips for you as well.
So I got on some of those trips, and I was lucky enough to be doing shows in Japan at the time, so we were able to time things quite well sometimes.
And when he retired from that and took on a post-production company, he moved to San Diego, which seemed like not a place one would expect you to be living, but you divided your time between London and San Diego.
And it's been quite wonderful, and I've been able to do things there.
On the
Yes,
sea.
exactly.
And that led to the opportunity to get involved with opera.
That's it, you know, because I happened to end up in, cruelly, the village of San Diego. Because I'd never met the head of the opera in London at all. And so I was asked by the head of the opera, Ian Campbell, had I ever done an opera? And he said, would you be interested? I said, I'd love to do an opera. So he started me on the Magic Flute, where I just did the costumes. And then following on from that, I was asked to do the sets and costumes for the Pearl Fishers, and that's done 18 towns around America. And then after that, I did Aida with Houston Opera, that then went to London.
And you've become an opera fan, which you never were before you started doing this.
No, I hadn't. And it's quite magical, the combination working in your head of the music and seeing sort of like a large size 18 lady that you can make look like a princess and float around, and a wonderful vehicle for my prince.
A wonderful vehicle for your prince. And I mean, and the whole sets and the men, and I mean, it's just such a riot of pattern and color and spectacular.
It's been quite fantastic.
We need to get you
do.
to do one in New York.
I did do the Pearl Fishers came to New York at one time. It didn't do the Met. Missy West over there in the front row, who worked with me on these. What is that opera company still going here in New York? No. New York City Opera that we did it for. Lincoln Center, yes.
Okay. And then we need to get you to do some ballet clothes for New York City Ballet when they do all these big fashion designer benefits to kick off the season.
Yes.
We're going to work on that. Okay. So let's see. What else do we want to talk to you about? Celebrity Master Chef. She's a celebrity master chef on TV in London. Are you a good cook?
I like to think I am, because I invite people to my dinners and they do eat the food.
That's always a good sign.
Once I'd accepted to do it, I went into a sheer panic attack, because it's all worked to timing. So apart from the stuff they throw at you to do things, I thought, well, maybe I'll make my speciality, which is bread and butter pudding.
Bread and butter pudding?
That's it, very English. But then you realise you have to cook it, make it and cook it all in exactly 1 hour. So I had to do practice at home, cutting and make. I thought better look artistic, so I was cutting bread into heart shapes and sprinkling glitter and things on top to make sure I could do it for an hour in an hour.
And what were some of the other challenges on the TV show that you had to cook and make?
They made us make sausages. That gave me a heart attack. You know, where they suddenly said, you're making sausages today and you're all at your stations, and they don't give you the recipe. You've got to hit and miss what you're going to do. Or feeding, let me see, we were divided into twos because there were only 4 of us left by then, and we had to feed people in London
So you made it
Zoo.
to the last 4?
Sorry?
You made it to the last 4?
I made it to the last 4 of the first group, then more groups. I don't know who eventually won.
Okay.
Haven't seen it yet.
And you made the food at the zoo? Tell us
We
about
had
that.
to feed 80 people, and you have to look at the food and decide what you can make. And you have to make 1 vegetarian dish, 1 meat dish, and then a dessert. And I mean, I can make apple crumble standing on my head. Did I think of that? No, I thought of stuffed apples, and I have to hold the thing. Because you only give them 4 or 5 minutes to decide what food you're going to grab for your different things. The girl who was working with me said the boys got more help than the girls. I don't know.
You didn't make any eggs. Is this an egg or a flower on your dress?
Oh, I didn't do fried eggs for that.
Is that Andrew Logan?
It's an Andrew Logan fried egg. But
And Andrew made a lot of jewellery.
he
with
makes
your
the jewellery,
good
and I
friend.
do his costumes for his alternative Miss Worlds.
Okay, what are you working on next?
What am I working on next? Oh, that's throwing me. Oh, I've got an exhibition that's coming out of the pearlfishers and Aida in the John Wayne Airport it's between Los Angeles and San Diego, and I arranged to do it before Sala died, so I've still got that commitment to do, apart from new collections, because I'm doing a collection for IKEA that's about to come out.
This is breaking news, a collection for IKEA.
I'm looking forward to that. And some happy socks and things.
Do you know what it's going to be?
No, they want me to work with a whole group of people. They're going to take me back over to their headquarters in Sweden, and they want me with a big group to tell them. But I mean, I hope it's going to be things like rugs and throws, because I'm a textile designer, so I'd like to be using what I'm trained for, really.
Yeah, and the linens and all of that.
You know, and think of things that I want to live with, and hope that other people will want to live with them.
Now, I want a Zandra Rhodes rug. And we'll have to line up outside like they did for Virgil Abloh when he just launched his collection at IKEA. So we've got to all go line up when Zandra's comes out. Would you ever do children's clothes?
No, I mean, a lot of things, it's if someone came to me and said, that's what I'd really like you to do, and it was the right sort of thing where we could reach enough people, I'd love to do it. I mean, I love using things, and particularly as a printer, you could do lots of lovely prints that could look good on children.
Was there anybody out there in the world that you would love to dress that you haven't?
I'd love to dress Princess Kate. I think it would be lovely.
Princess Kate. And Meghan?
Haven't thought about that one.
There's more
If she
to that
lasts long
story.
enough.
There's what?
If she lasts long enough.
If she lasts long enough. Ooh. Well, we think she's going to last long enough. Okay, what, anything still on your bucket list, like something crazy that you would still like to do?
Gosh. I don't know. I think it might be wonderful to have a shop again, you know.
Have a shop again?
Yes, you know, because then you've got sort of like the world's got access to you in some way or
We have a lot of empty ones in New York.
I know. I think there's a lot of empty ones worldwide, and we've got to probably rethink ourselves on how we're going to do this. I think we've got to end up with less, and we've got to work out how we can enjoy design, but not necessarily be wasteful at all. I mean, it's a serious problem.
It's a very serious problem.
I can't make dresses quick enough, so they're not wasteful. You know, I hope everyone that has one of mine is going to keep it.
Oh, well, how could you ever get rid of something you've made? And making it sustainable is very much a big project here at FIT. Sustainability is a big part of the curriculum here.
Yes, we're definitely, really and truly, like you're saying about shops and everything. I mean, the main thing is, when advice for young people is, if you want to be a designer, I think you've got to be very determined and don't give up and don't let people put you off. But I don't know that it's got to be mass design. We've got to work out a way around everything. Oh my God, you're getting so many questions. I don't know what I'm going to do. Give up here.
Okay, we're at the very end. Let's go to some of these audience questions, one or two of which are on my notes as well. What advice would you give a young designer who loves textiles?
Find some way to produce those textiles. It's slightly easier in one sense, because when I started, they had to be screen printed, whereas now you can do that sort of thing digitally and sort of see what you can do and what can happen. I mean, what I perfected was screen prints that then controlled the shape of the design, which was revolutionary for the late 60s, early 70s.
Okay. Let's, I was going to ask you about your legacy, but I think I'd rather, instead of having a answer about that, because I think your legacy is intact as somebody who's made a real difference in this industry and in this world. I'd rather everybody get online to go buy the books before the bookseller leaves. This 50 years of fashion, 50 fabulous years in fashion, excuse me, is really, it's a Bible, it's a beautiful book. And Zandra will sign them. And she has a fabulous handwriting. It just looks just like her patterns and her squiggles. So you're going to want to see your name written by Zandra Rhodes in that book. So Zandra, thank you for being here and for doing this and continuing to make fabulous things and look so wonderful and
thank you for doing it again.
Yeah, my pleasure.
And the questions are all different. When she gave me a heart attack the other day, they were so amazing.
Well, thank you, and thank you all.
Here's the gold marker.
Oh, is that my marker?
Yeah, we got you one. Yeah.
Wait till they go by them and she'll sign them.